Cleaning Up After Ice Storms. William Hovey Smith, 2014. I'm the author of Backyard Deer Hunting, and sometimes we have to recover from some adverse environmental events.
This is Hovey Smith, the Backyard Sportsman. We are in the midst of having an ice event here in central Georgia. We get these every once in a while, but this particular storm happens to be the worst I've ever experienced so far as tree breakage is concerned. My pine trees, like this one, well, all these leaves are now coated with a rind of 1/4 inch of ice, which adds a tremendous amount of weight to the leaves and to the limbs. So these things are breaking off the trees and falling down all over. Every few minutes I hear another crash back in the woods where another big limb comes down. Well, we're going to be cleaning up the yard and getting up this stuff, and I'll show you how to do it with hand tools. But for right now, no, we're not going to do much of anything. First off, it's too dangerous to get under these pine trees. There's no sense in trying to move limbs with 100 pounds of ice hanging on them. So we'll just let these sit there and accumulate for a while. Have done some things. I've moved my trucks out of the way, so they're here in the middle of the yard, away from any trees at all, and we're getting our tools ready. Thus far, there's no damage to my house and sheds, so I've lucked out that way. But the event is not over. It's still freezing, and we still have misting rain coming down. I went back to the hunt camp to see how it had fared through all this stuff. Well, it did okay. But now walking back along my trail is about like walking through an artillery barrage. Limbs, some of them weighing hundreds of pounds, like this one, are coming down out of these pine trees all around me. So I'm going to sort of get the hell out of Dodge. We are proceeding to start the fires to clean up after our ice storm down here in Georgia. I have pieces of perhaps a dozen trees down in my yard, and the species include a little bit of pecan. They actually didn't have any leaves on them, so they fared fairly well. A lot of pine, some oak, some live oak. And these are limbs, well, some of them right now probably weigh close to 1,000 pounds. So obviously you have to cut them in smaller pieces. The last time we did something similar is when I lost a huge pecan tree over there, and I cut it up largely with hatchets. This time we're going to progress up next in size and actually use a camp axe or two. I've already started my fire piles, and at the bottom are some broken up cardboard boxes, then the driest wood I could find, and then the small wood from a smallish limb. Now the big pieces of the limb are here on top, and these are used to weight down the pile and put pressure on the smaller pieces underneath to make them easier to catch. So I'm going to go ahead and light the pile, and we'll see if we can get it started. The ground is absolutely saturated. I don't want to put a vehicle on it yet, so I'm basically trimming the big limbs so I can later cut them with a chainsaw if I need to, and dragging up what I can by hand. Later, I'll actually get out the garden tractor and drag with that. You can see my pile of limbs, and the larger pieces on top here as weights. We'll get us a piece of newspaper here and stick it underneath the cardboard. See if we can get that going. Come on, guy. Alright, that's one piece on that side. I'm going to do another one on the other side and see if we can get it going too. Well, we had to rely on the ancient Indian fire starting method. That is a little waste of gasoline that I clean paintbrushes with. A few teaspoons full of that, and it got the paper started good. Actually, the paper had gotten so dampened because it was on this wet ground that it really didn't want to catch. but now at least we've got it started. Now the wood is starting to ignite, and you can hear crackles. Now that is steam being given off by this wet wood. There is some dry wood in there, but comparatively little. So I'm really having to work at it to get this wet wood started, but I believe that we have it going now. It's actually the wood that's doing the burning rather than the paper for the most part at this particular moment. So things are going as planned. This is a slow process. This is not a go woof and it's all gone. Now that we actually have some flames starting to lick out through this pile of branches, I'm going to start laying on some laurel leaves. Now these leaves are from a cherry laurel, and it lost a lot of limbs, and they will blow somewhat, and there is a little bit of wind. But the reason I want to get rid of these now is because the ground is absolutely saturated and nothing's going to catch fire should I lose a few leaves out of this pile on the wind. We're doing reasonably well in getting that first bunch of cherry laurel combusted, and actually even getting some of the cherry laurel itself dry enough to burn. So I'm going to continue working with this pile, adding drier material and interlaying it with the cherry laurel so I can keep the fire alive. We're now getting very well along with burning up the cherry laurel, and we've been at this now for about 6 hours. And I'm now progressing to the next broad-leafed evergreen that we have, which is the magnolia. And the magnolia has big leaves, and they have a somewhat waxy covering, so they should burn and ignite pretty good. But again, I want to get these leaves, which will blow, burnt while the ground is still saturated. Well, it's getting to be about 4 o'clock, and I'm starting what's actually going to be the last burn of the day. I'm going to burn this down to coals, and then we'll call that good for today. We're now at the end of day 1 of burning, and it's looking like a little volcano there now. But we have managed to get the laurel burned, and we have managed to get even the green magnolia burned. Well, this is the first pile of pine, and I'm just going to let it sit there and air dry for about an hour, so at least we get rid of some of the free water that's on the pine leaves, because this is every bit green wood, and it's going to take a bit to get it started anyway. So we'll give it every chance it can have. Our burning of green pine got absolutely nowhere. Even though I let it set for 2 hours before I tried to ignite it, yeah, it was just too wet and too green. So I've layered it with some hardwood, also green, and so we're just going to let that pile sit there until it dries out enough to really combust. My burn piles look a little different than when you last saw them. I was never able to get that green, wet wood to burn. So consequently, what I've done this morning is I banked both piles up with dried leaves, or at least drier leaves. And I'm going to let those dry some more and then start a leaf fire around these pieces of wood. That'll drive out the moisture, ultimately raise them to the point of combustion, and then get me a hot bed of coals when I can really burn some of this other green wood. The winds are relatively calm at the moment, so I've got this shredded paper that I'm using for fire starter. So I'm going to stuff it under here and see if we can get this started. Well, I'd say that's a roaring start. You can see the skeleton of the green limbs in there. Yeah, they're catching. So that is doing its job. But I'll not do this again today. If I get this one going, then we'll call that one good, because Just too much wind. I don't like what it's doing with these leaves at all. This is now a useful fire. Now I think it'll combust anything I put on it. So we're going to try piling on and see what we do. About every third load of burning this pine, I have to put another cart of drier material on it, like the pine straw and the small cuttings, just so that these things take up pretty good. Although, as you can see, they do ultimately burn. But we've got our straw, so we're going to put it on anyway. All of these small cuttings have to be moved. So it makes no difference if we get them now or if we get them later. They help keep the fire alive, so much the better. Here we're faced with our usual problem. That is, the wood is reluctant to burn, particularly those bigger limbs that I put on there now. So we have another cart full of pine straw and small trimmings, and that's going on there. And so that'll help things out. Well, it is morning again, and I have once again rekindled the fire. Now the large limbs that I put on last night, most of them burned in half. So I consolidated the pile and brought those ends to the middle of the pile, and I put a new load of pine straw and small cuttings on it right now to get it started good. But with a good bed of coals, yeah, this kept all night, and I did replenish it twice during the night. Once at about 9 o'clock and again at about 1 o'clock in the morning. And as you can see, the wind is variable right now, but it's getting started. So, we're going to proceed with our dragging with the lawnmower, more branches and cutting up and putting on the fire. Now that my first pile is going, and it's early in the morning and the winds have moderated, I'm going to fire this pile and get it started. What this will do will give me a pile that will be ready to receive materials as quick as I can get them here. So this will increase the efficiency of the process and also allow me to, of course, burn up this material which has resisted burning before. What's in this pile right now is some pine, but mainly green oak wood. Well, our approach with getting this fire started is successful. And now both the original pine is burning as well as the oak wood I put on top of it. So that fire is in good shape. Now the other one, I've just drug up a cedar branch and I'm going to cut that up and put that on that pile, so I'll have two piles going. Now this sort of stuff is going to continue for some days, and I don't intend to drag you through every bit of it. But this is a method. Basically, with two piles and a hot bed of coals, you can combust almost anything. In fact, there was even some ice still clinging to those pine branches that I put on, and yeah, they did burn. So yeah, we're getting it done. It's just going to take a while. But now, this is Hovey Smith, reminding you to hunt what you eat and eat what you hunt. Be legal, be ethical, be safe, goodbye, God bless, and see you next time.
Among my prize-winning books are Extreme Muzzleloading, Backyard Deer Hunting, Crossbow Hunting, and Practical Bow Fishing, and all of these are available as softcover and ebooks. I have an 8-book ebook series, including Shooting and Maintaining Your Muzzleloader. I will be giving a free one-day seminar on becoming an outdoor communicator at the Charlie Elliott Wildlife Center near Mansfield, Georgia on March 11th. For more information, send your request to the following email address. To find out more about my books, blogs, and videos, go to my website at www.hoviesmith.com. Good hunting and good eating from the outdoors. Goodbye and God bless.